The first round snapped past Sergeant First Class Naomi O'Yellerin's head close enough to feel the heat. She pressed her body into the crumbling mud wall as the Sanjin Valley erupted into chaos around her. Dust and debris raining down as machine gun fire stitched across the compound, where 240 Marines had just walked into hell. 30 seconds. That was how long the ambush had been going, and already 2 Marines were dead, their bodies crumpled in the poppy field where the first volley had caught them completely exposed. But what the enemy fighters setting up this kill zone did not know, what nobody in 2nd Battalion truly understood, was that the 2 women they had assigned to rear observation were not just snipers. They were something else entirely. Amara. Naomi found her sister 10 feet away, pressed against the same wall, her rifle already up and scanning. Their eyes met for half a second. No words needed. They had been communicating without speaking since they were children. And 20 years later, that silent language was the only thing keeping Naomi calm as rounds cracked overhead and men screamed for medics. The radio on her chest erupted with noise. Lieutenant Breslin's voice, strained with pain, calling for suppressive fire. Then Gunnery Sergeant Harlan cutting through, barking orders, his voice carrying that particular tone he always used when addressing the sisters. Shade Team, hold position. Observe and report. Do not engage. Naomi keyed her radio. Shade 1 to command. We have eyes on enemy sniper position. 1,100 meters, northwest compound. Requesting permission to engage. The response came fast and hard. Negative, Shade. You stay put. Last thing I need is ink models playing hero when we got real Marines in the fight. Ink models. Naomi felt her jaw tighten. She glanced at the tribal patterns running down her forearms, the Nigerian designs their father had helped them choose, the artwork that Harlan and half the battalion had been mocking since they arrived. Pretty tattoos for pretty girls, one of them had said during the briefing that morning. But they look real nice at the beach. Another burst of gunfire. Another Marine crying out. Naomi watched through her scope as a young lance corporal tried to drag his wounded friend toward cover, rounds kicking up dirt inches from his boots. She knew that kid. Hendricks. He was one of the ones who had laughed at Harlan's jokes. Amara shifted beside her. Her younger sister's voice was barely a whisper. I have a sniper. I can take him. Naomi knew she could. Amara could shoot the wings off a fly at 1,000 meters. They both could, but orders were orders, and Harlan had made his position clear from the moment they joined this unit. Women did not belong in combat roles. Women definitely did not belong behind a sniper rifle. And women with sleeve tattoos and African heritage were apparently the lowest form of life in his personal hierarchy. Hold, Naomi said. Not yet. The enemy's sniper fired again. Through her scope, Naomi watched a Marine sergeant take the round through his shoulder, spinning him around before he collapsed. That was 3 wounded now. The ambush was perfectly executed, a null-shaped kill zone with overlapping fields of fire. Whoever planned this knew exactly what they were doing. Shade Team, Harlan's voice again, you seeing anything useful back there or just painting your nails? Naomi did not respond. She was too busy tracking enemy positions, counting muzzle flashes, calculating distances, and wind speed. Beside her, Amara was doing the same. They worked in perfect synchronization, a lifetime of practice distilled into micro-movements and silent gestures. Amara touched the pendant hanging beneath her body armor. Naomi saw it and felt the familiar ache in her chest. Elijah's dog tags, their brother's dog tags, the ones they had worn every single day since Fallujah took him from them 8 years ago. Focus, Naomi said. I am focused. Amara's voice was steady despite the chaos. But those are our people dying down there. And that sniper is going to keep killing them until someone puts him down. She was right. Naomi knew she was right. The enemy sniper had the high ground, good concealment, and a clear line of sight to the Marines' only avenue of retreat. As long as he was breathing, 2nd Battalion was trapped. Another explosion. An RPG impacting somewhere to their left. More screaming. Naomi made her decision. She keyed the radio one more time. Shade 1 to command. Enemy sniper is priority target. We have solution. Requesting immediate authorization to engage. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. Then Harlan's voice, colder than before. I said negative, Sergeant. You want to play soldier, you should have joined a different corps. Now stay in your lane and let the real Marines handle this. Naomi released the radio. She looked at Amara. Her sister's dark eyes were burning with something that went beyond anger, beyond frustration. It was the same fire Naomi felt in her own chest. The same fire that had driven them through Scout Sniper School when everyone said they would fail. The same fire that had pushed them to become 2 of the deadliest marksmen the Marine Corps had ever produced, even if nobody wanted to admit it. Down in the kill zone, Private First Class Aguayo took a round through his leg. He was 19 years old. Naomi had adjusted his plate carrier that morning, shown him how to wear it properly. Amara had given him their last water. Now he was screaming for his mother while his blood soaked into Afghan soil. Naomi looked at her sister. Her sister looked back. We did not come here to watch Marines die, Naomi said. Amara was already moving before she finished the sentence. They moved like shadows through the chaos. Naomi went left. Amara went right, their bodies low and fast as they crossed the open ground between the rear position and the elevated compound that would give them the angle they needed. Rounds snapped through the air around them, but neither sister hesitated. They had trained for this. They had bled for this. And they had buried a brother who died, believing they could do exactly what they were about to do. Naomi reached the first piece of cover, a collapsed section of wall that smelled like goat dung and old smoke. She pressed herself against it and counted to 3, then broke for the next position. Behind her, she could hear Harlan's voice exploding through the radio, demanding to know what the hell Shade Team thought they were doing, threatening court-martials and career destruction. She ignored him. There would be time for consequences later. Right now, there were Marines dying. Amara reached her side moments later, breathing hard but controlled. Her rifle was slung across her back, her movement fluid despite the 30 pounds of gear weighing her down. They had run together since they were children, racing through the streets of their Chicago neighborhood, and later through the hills of Camp Pendleton during training that was supposed to break them. It never did. The elevated compound was 50 meters ahead, an old farmer's storage building, partially collapsed from some previous battle, but the remaining structure offered perfect sight lines across the valley. If they could reach it, they could see everything. They could end this. Naomi signaled. Amara nodded. They moved. Before we continue with what happens next, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Maybe you know someone who was underestimated before they proved everyone wrong. The final sprint nearly killed them. An enemy machine gunner spotted their movement and swung his weapon toward them, stitching a line of fire across their path. Naomi felt a round tug at her sleeve, missing flesh by centimeters. Amara dove the last 10 feet, rolling through the doorway of the compound with Naomi right behind her. They lay there for a moment, gasping, dust swirling around them in the dim light. Then Amara laughed, a short, sharp sound that had no business existing in the middle of a firefight. Naomi stared at her. What is funny about this? Nothing. Amara pushed herself up, already scanning for a firing position. Just thinking about what Mom would say if she could see us right now. Their mother, retired Gunnery Sergeant Adiz O'Yelleran, who had served 20 years in the Corps before they were born, who had raised 3 children on her own after their father passed, working double shifts to keep food on the table while teaching them everything she knew about discipline and sacrifice, who had begged them not to enlist after Elijah died, then held them both when they told her it was something they had to do. She would say we are being stupid, Naomi replied. Then she would tell us to shoot straight. Amara found her position, a gap in a crumbling wall that offered a clear view of the valley below. She settled behind her rifle, adjusting her body with the precision of someone who had done this 10,000 times before. The scope came up to her eye. I have the sniper, she said. 1,100 meters. He is behind that broken wall, 3rd compound from the ridge. Naomi moved to her side, pulling out her spotting scope. She found the position Amara described and studied it carefully. The enemy sniper was good. His concealment was nearly perfect, just a small gap where his rifle barrel protruded. But nearly perfect was not perfect. Wind, Amara said. Naomi checked the indicators. Full value left. 8 to 10 miles per hour. Steady. Amara made the adjustment. Her breathing slowed. Naomi watched her sister's finger move to the trigger and felt the familiar calm settle over her own body. This was what they were made for. This was why they had survived every obstacle the Corps had thrown at them. The radio crackled. Shade Team, this is command. Return to position immediately. That is a direct order. Naomi looked at Amara. Her sister did not move, did not blink, did not acknowledge the transmission in any way. Her entire being was focused on the shot. If you do not comply, Harlan continued, I will personally ensure you never wear that uniform again. You hear me. Your careers are over. Amara exhaled slowly. The rifle was an extension of her body now. Her heartbeat, the only movement as she waited for the space between beats. You take the shot, Naomi said quietly, and I will handle Harlan. Amara's lips curved slightly. Always protecting me. Someone has to. Below them, the battle raged on. Marines pinned down, wounded crying for help, the enemy pressing their advantage. The sniper who had already killed 2 Americans was settling his aim on a third. A young corporal who had no idea death was watching him through a scope. Amara saw it happen in slow motion. The enemy sniper adjusting his position. His rifle barrel shifting toward the unsuspecting Marine. His finger tightening on the trigger. But Amara was faster. She fired. The sound rolled across the valley like thunder. 1,100 meters away, the enemy sniper's head snapped back and he crumpled behind his wall, his rifle clattering to the ground unfired. Silence on the radio. Complete silence. Then Naomi keyed her transmission. Shade 1 to command. Enemy sniper neutralized. More silence. 5 seconds. 10. Finally, Lieutenant Breslin's voice, strained but something new in it. Something like hope. Shade Team, confirm kill. Confirmed, sir. Naomi allowed herself a small smile. And we're just getting started. She looked at her sister. Amara was already scanning for the next target, her face calm, her hands steady. This was not the end of anything. This was the beginning. The beginning of the longest hour of their lives, and the hour that would change everything. Naomi settled in beside her and raised her own rifle. The enemy had made a mistake today. They had pinned down 240 Marines. But they had also given 2 sisters with something to prove a perfect field of fire. Time to go to work. The enemy reacted within seconds. Whoever was commanding them understood immediately what had happened, understood that their prize sniper was dead and that someone with serious skill had killed him. Naomi watched through her scope as fighters scrambled to reposition, their coordinated ambush suddenly thrown into uncertainty. Good, she thought. Uncertain men make mistakes. Amara was already tracking her next target. Machine gun position, 900 meters east side of the irrigation ditch. 2 men feeding the belt, 1 on the trigger. They were the ones keeping the Marines pinned in the poppy field. I see them, Naomi said. Wind has shifted. Quarter value right now. Amara adjusted. Call it. Send it. The rifle barked. 900 meters away, the machine gunner slumped over his weapon. His 2 companions froze for half a second, confused, and that half second cost one of them his life as Amara cycled the bolt and fired again. The 3rd man ran. He made it 15 feet before the 3rd round caught him between the shoulders. Naomi keyed her radio. Shade 1 to all units. Machine gun, east is down. You have an opening. Move now. For a moment, nothing happened. The Marines below were still processing what they were hearing, still trying to understand how the 2 women they had dismissed as decorations were suddenly running the battlefield. Then Lieutenant Breslin's voice cut through the confusion. You heard her. 1st squad, bound forward. 2nd squad covering fire. Move. The Marines moved. Naomi felt a surge of something warm in her chest as she watched them break from cover and advance. No longer pinned, no longer helpless. This was why she had joined. This was why she had endured every insult and every slight and every man who looked at her like she did not belong. To be here, in this moment, doing what she was born to do. Amara shifted her rifle. Another target. Another calculation. Another life, measured in windage and elevation. RPG team, Naomi said. 600 meters. They're setting up on that rooftop. I see them. Amara's voice was ice. 2 men. The first shot took the man holding the launcher. The second took his partner as he reached for the fallen weapon. Neither of them ever saw where death came from. Below, the Marines were advancing steadily now, moving from cover to cover with renewed confidence. The enemy's ambush was falling apart, their carefully planned kill zone dissolving under the precise fire raining down from the elevated compound. Harlan was shouting orders, directing the assault, and for once his voice carried no contempt when he mentioned the sisters. "Shade team," he said, and the words seemed to cost him something. "Keep it up." Naomi did not bother responding. She was too busy doing her job, but the enemy was not finished. Through her scope, she spotted movement on the ridgeline. Fresh fighters arriving, at least a dozen of them, moving down toward the valley with weapons ready. Reinforcements. Someone had called for help, and help had arrived. "Amara," she said, "we have company." Her sister shifted, found a new threat, and swore under her breath. "That is a lot of guns." Naomi counted them. 14 men, 14 rifles, and they were moving with purpose, spreading out to flank the advancing Marines who had no idea death was coming from behind. "We need to warn them," Amara said. Naomi keyed her radio. Shade 1 to command. "Enemy reinforcements approaching from the north ridge. 14 fighters. They are moving to flank your position." Breslin responded immediately. "Can you engage?" Naomi looked at Amara. Her sister nodded once. "Already on it, sir." They worked in perfect rhythm. Naomi spotted Amara's shot. One target down, then another, then a third. The reinforcements scattered, seeking cover, but cover was hard to find when death could reach out and touch you from over 1,000 meters away. But 14 was too many, even for them. Some of the fighters made it to concealment. Some of them started returning fire, their rounds snapping against the walls of the compound. And some of them kept advancing, willing to die if it meant closing the distance. Naomi felt a round pass, close enough to hear it whisper. She pressed herself lower against the wall, but did not stop spotting. 400 meters, she said. 3 men moving through the orchard. Amara engaged. 2 went down. The third dove behind a tree and stayed there. "We are running low," Amara said. She did not need to specify what. They both knew. 20 rounds between them when they started. Maybe 12 left now. Then we make them count. Another group of fighters appeared on the eastern ridge. More reinforcements, or the same group repositioning. It did not matter. What mattered was that the enemy had numbers, and numbers eventually won against skill if you let them get close enough. The radio crackled. "Shade team, this is Breslin. We are pushing through. Can you hold that position?" Naomi looked around at their crumbling compound. Bullet holes in the walls. Dust in the air. No reinforcements coming. No support. No extraction. Just 2 sisters with rifles and a whole lot of people who wanted them dead. "We will hold," she said. Amara glanced at her. That might have been optimistic. Naomi almost smiled. "When has that ever stopped us?" A burst of automatic fire raked across the top of their wall. Chunks of mud brick exploded inches from Naomi's head. She ducked, rolled, came up in new position. The enemy had figured out where they were. Now it was just a matter of time before they concentrated enough fire to overwhelm them. Through her scope, she saw something that made her blood run cold. An RPG team, different from the one Amara had killed. They were setting up behind a compound wall, barely visible, their launcher aimed directly at the sister's position. "Amara," she said. 11 o'clock. RPG. Her sister swung the rifle around. Found the target. But the angle was wrong, the shot partially obscured by the wall they were hiding behind. "I do not have it," Amara said. "I cannot get a clean shot." The man with the launcher was raising it to his shoulder. 3 seconds, maybe less, before he fired, before a rocket turned their position into rubble and ash. Naomi made her decision without thinking. She rose from cover, exposing herself completely, and fired 3 rounds from her rifle at the RPG team. The shots went wide. She was not the marksman her sister was, but that was not the point. The point was to make them flinch, to make them move, to give Amara a target. It worked. The man with the launcher shifted just slightly, just enough. And in that moment of exposure, Amara fired. The RPG detonated in his hands. Naomi dropped back into cover as the explosion echoed across the valley. Her heart was hammering, her hands shaking for the first time all day. That had been close. Too close. Amara stared at her. That was stupid. It worked. It was still stupid. Do not do that again. Naomi caught her breath and forced her hands to steady. No promises. The dust from the explosion had barely settled when Naomi heard footsteps. Heavy boots scrambling over rubble, coming from somewhere below their position. She raised her rifle and aimed at the doorway, finger moving to the trigger. A face appeared in the gap. Young, terrified American. Lance Corporal Hendricks came through the doorway at a crouch, his rifle clutched against his chest and his eyes wide with adrenaline. He froze when he saw Naomi's weapon pointed at his head. "Friendly," he gasped. "Friendly. Do not shoot." Naomi lowered her rifle. "What are you doing here?" Hendricks crawled toward them, keeping his head below the level of the damaged walls. He was breathing hard, his uniform soaked with sweat and dust. When he reached them, he collapsed against the wall and tried to catch his breath. "Breslin sent me," he said between gasps. "Said you might need a spotter." Naomi studied him. This was the same Marine who had laughed at Harlan's jokes that morning. The same one who had made comments about their tattoos being better suited for a beach than a battlefield. Now he was here, risking his life to help them. "Can you spot?" she asked. Hendricks swallowed. "I can try." Amara did not look away from her scope. "Good enough. Get over here and make yourself useful." Hendricks moved to Amara's side, pulling out a pair of binoculars. His hand was shaking, but he pressed them to his eyes and started scanning. Naomi watched him for a moment, then returned to her own position. They needed every advantage they could get. The battle below had shifted. The Marines were no longer pinned in the kill zone. They had pushed forward, using the openings the sisters had created, and were now engaged in close combat among the compounds. Harlan was somewhere in the middle of it, his voice a constant presence on the radio as he directed squads and called for fire support that was still 20 minutes out. But the enemy reinforcements were still coming. Naomi could see them moving along the ridgeline, using the terrain to stay hidden, working their way toward a position that would let them pour fire down on the advancing Marines. If they reached it, all the progress would be undone. "Amara," she said. "North Ridge. They're setting up. I see them." Amara shifted her aim. "But I only have 8 rounds left." "Then pick your targets carefully." Through her scope, Naomi watched the enemy fighters settling into position. There was one among them who moved differently than the others. More confident, more controlled. The others looked to him before acting, waited for his signals, followed his lead. The commander. "Amara," she said. "The one in the dark vest. Center of the group." Amara found him. "I see him. 1,300 meters. Elevated angle. Wind is tricky. Can you make it?" Her sister was quiet for a moment, calculating, measuring, running through the mathematics of death that she had learned to perform as naturally as breathing. "Maybe," she said finally, "but if I miss, he will know where we are. They will all know." Naomi considered the options. They were low on ammunition, exposed, and facing an enemy that was learning their position with every shot. But if that commander reached his destination, if he got his men into position to flank the Marines, then everything they had done would be for nothing. "Take the shot," she said. Amara adjusted her aim. Her breathing slowed. Beside her, Hendricks watched through his binoculars, his earlier fear replaced by something like awe as he witnessed the calm precision of a true marksman at work. "Wind," Amara said. Naomi checked. "Half value left. Gusting." Amara made the adjustment. Her finger touched the trigger. And then Hendricks spoke. "Wait. He is moving." Naomi saw it too. The commander had shifted, stepping behind one of his men, using the fighter as a shield while he surveyed the valley below. The shot was gone. Amara exhaled slowly. "I need him to move." Naomi thought fast. She grabbed her radio. "Shade 1 to command. I need suppressive fire on the North Ridge. Now." There was a pause. Then Harlan's voice, grudging but compliant. Copy shade. Firing. Seconds later, a burst of automatic fire raked across the ridgeline. The enemy fighters ducked, scattered, sought cover. And for one moment, just one, the commander stepped clear of his human shield. Amara fired. 1,300 meters away, the commander spun and fell. His men froze, staring at their fallen leader, and in that moment of confusion, the Marines below poured fire into their position. The flanking attack collapsed before it ever began. Hendricks lowered his binoculars. His face was pale. That was impossible, he said. That shot was impossible. Amara cycled her bolt. Nothing is impossible. Naomi allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Then she saw what was coming next, and the satisfaction died. More fighters, emerging from the compounds to the east. Not reinforcements this time. Survivors of the original ambush, rallying for a counterattack. And they were moving directly toward the Marines who were still pushing forward, still exposed, still unaware of the threat. Shade team to command, Naomi said. Enemy counterattack forming. Eastern compounds. 20 pre-fighters. Breslin's response was immediate. Can you engage? Naomi looked at Amara. Her sister checked her ammunition. 6 rounds. 6 rounds. 20 fighters. The math did not work. We will do what we can, Naomi said. Amara settled behind her rifle. Hendricks pressed his binoculars to his eyes. And, somewhere below, 20 men with guns started moving toward Marines who had no idea they were coming. Naomi touched the stock of her rifle. They had trained their whole lives for moments like this. They had endured mockery and doubt and dismissal from men who thought they knew what women were capable of. They had buried a brother and sworn on his grave that his death would mean something. 6 rounds. 20 fighters. The math did not work, but math had never stopped them before. Call targets, Amara said. Naomi raised her scope and started counting the dead. The first target went down at 900 meters. A clean shot through the chest that dropped him before he knew he was dying. Amara cycled the bolt and found a second target, a man carrying an RPG launcher who was trying to get into position to fire on the advancing Marines. He died with his finger on the trigger, the rocket spiraling harmlessly into the sky. 4 rounds left. Naomi tracked the remaining fighters through her scope. They were spreading out now, using the compounds for cover, moving in small groups toward the Marines who were still pushing forward. Breslin's men had no idea what was coming. They were focused on the enemies in front of them, not the ones circling behind. 3 o'clock, Naomi said. 2 fighters moving through the orchard. Amara shifted. Found them. Fired once. 1 down. The other dove behind a tree and stayed there. 3 rounds. The counterattack was gaining momentum. Fighters were pouring out of the eastern compounds now. More than Naomi had initially counted. 30 at least. Maybe more. They moved with desperation, knowing that if the Marines broke through their lines, the battle was lost. Shade team to command, Naomi said. Enemy strength is higher than reported. 30-plus fighters moving to flank. We cannot stop them all. Harlan's voice came back hard. Then stop as many as you can. Naomi wanted to scream at him. Wanted to tell him that they were not miracle workers, that they were 2 women with 3 rounds between them and an entire army bearing down on Marines who trusted them to watch their backs. But screaming would not help anyone. Amara, she said instead. Priority targets only. Anyone with heavy weapons. Her sister nodded. Her face was pale beneath the dust and sweat. Her jaw set in a line that Naomi recognized from 1,000 training sessions and 100 arguments and 1 funeral where neither of them could find the words to say goodbye. There, Naomi spotted movement near the irrigation ditch. Machine gun team setting up. Amara found them. 2 men. 1 gun. 1 round. She fired. The gunner collapsed over his weapon. His partner grabbed for the gun, and Naomi watched helplessly as he swung it toward the Marines. I am out, Amara said. Naomi did not think. She grabbed her own rifle, the one she carried but rarely used because Amara was the better shot. She found the target in her scope, a man with a machine gun and murder in his eyes, and she pressed the trigger. The shot went wide. Too far left. The man flinched but did not fall. Naomi fired again. This time the round caught him in the shoulder, spinning him away from the gun. Not a kill, but enough. One round left. Hers. Below them, the battle had become chaos. Marines and enemy fighters tangled together in the compounds. The neat lines of the ambush dissolved into 100 separate fights. Naomi could hear the crack of rifles and the screams of wounded men and the steady thump of helicopter rotors in the distance. Air support. Finally, but still too far away. Hendricks was pressed against the wall beside them, his binoculars forgotten, his face gray with shock. He had seen combat before, but nothing like this. Nothing so close, so personal, so dependent on the actions of two women he had dismissed as decorations. "We need more ammunition," he said. "There has to be something we can do." Naomi shook her head. There was nothing. They had given everything they had, and it was not enough. The enemy was still coming, still pushing, still threatening to overwhelm the Marines who had trusted them. Amara touched her pendant. Elijah's dog tags clinked softly against her chest. She closed her eyes for a moment, and Naomi saw her lips move in something that might have been a prayer. When she opened her eyes, they were clear. "Give me your rifle," she said. Naomi hesitated. One round. One shot. If Amara missed, they were done. But Amara never missed. Not when it mattered. Naomi handed over the rifle. Amara checked the chamber, confirmed the round, and settled into position. Through her scope, she scanned the battlefield below. "There," she said. "Center compound." The one giving orders. Naomi found him with her spotting scope. Another commander, or maybe just a senior fighter. He was standing in a doorway, directing his men, pointing toward the Marines with one hand while the other held a radio to his ear. Coordinating the counterattack. The brain of the operation. 1,400 meters, Naomi said. "Wind is shifting. I cannot give you a solid read." Amara was quiet for a long moment. The rifle was steady in her hands, her breathing slow and controlled. Around them, the battle raged. Men killed and died. Helicopters drew closer. And everything depended on one woman, one rifle, one bullet. "Elijah," Amara whispered. "Guide my hand." She fired. The shot crossed 1,400 meters of Afghan air. It rose and fell with the wind, drifted left, then right, then left again. It passed over the heads of fighting men and through the smoke of burning compounds and across the blood-soaked ground of the Sanjin Valley. And it found its target. The commander fell. His radio clattered to the ground. His men looked around in confusion, suddenly leaderless, suddenly lost. And in that moment of hesitation, the Marines surged forward. Naomi let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Beside her, Amara lowered the rifle and closed her eyes. Hendricks stared at them both. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could you say to something like that? What words existed for what he had just witnessed? Amara opened her eyes and looked at her sister. "We are out," she said. "I know. So what do we do now?" Naomi looked down at the battle below. The Marines were winning. The enemy was breaking. But there were still fighters out there, still threats, still men with guns who wanted to kill Americans. She drew her pistol. "We improvise." The pistol felt wrong in Naomi's hand. Too light, too close. A sniper's weapon was precision and distance. A pistol was desperation and last chances. But desperate was exactly what they were. Amara drew her own sidearm and checked the magazine. 15 rounds. Naomi had the same. 30 bullets between them and whatever came through that door. "Hendricks," Naomi said, "how many rounds do you have?" The lance corporal checked his rifle with trembling hands. 2 magazines. Maybe 60 rounds. "Then you are our primary weapon now." Naomi positioned him near the gap in the wall where Amara had been shooting. "Anything that moves out there, you engage. We will watch the approaches." Hendricks nodded. His fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Purpose. Determination. The desire to prove himself worthy of standing beside two women who had just changed everything he thought he knew about courage. The battle below was shifting. The enemy's counterattack had collapsed with their commander's death, fighters scattering into the compounds and orchards as Marines pressed forward. But scattered did not mean defeated. Naomi could see small groups rallying, regrouping, looking for any advantage they could find. And some of them had figured out where the deadly fire had been coming from. Movement, Amara said. South approach. 3 men. Naomi moved to her sister's position and looked down. 3 fighters were working their way up the slope toward their compound, using the rocks and scrub brush for cover. They moved like men who knew exactly where they were going and what they intended to do when they got there. Hendricks, Naomi said. South slope. 3 targets. The lance corporal swung his rifle around. His first burst went high, kicking up dirt above the lead fighter's head. The man dropped flat, and his companion scattered. Breathe, Amara told him. Find your target. Squeeze. Hendricks fired again. This time one of the fighters jerked and fell, tumbling down the slope in a cloud of dust. The other 2 kept coming. Naomi raised her pistol. The range was too far for accurate fire, but she needed to slow them down. She squeezed off 3 rounds, the shots cracking through the air, and the fighters dove for cover. We cannot hold this position, Amara said. Her voice was calm, but Naomi heard the truth beneath it. They were exposed, outnumbered, and running out of options. The radio crackled. Shade Team, this is Breslin. What is your status? Naomi keyed the transmission. We are combat ineffective, sir. Out of rifle ammunition. Enemy approaching our position. A pause. Then Breslin's voice, strained but steady. Hold on, Shade. We are coming to you. Naomi almost laughed. The Marines were still 500 meters away, still engaged with enemy fighters, still fighting for every inch of ground. By the time they reached the compound, it would be over one way or another. More movement. East side now. For fighters working their way through a drainage ditch that would bring them within 50 meters of the compound's entrance. Hendricks saw them too and opened fire, his rounds splashing into the muddy water. One of the fighters went down. The others kept coming. Naomi felt something she had not felt since the day Elijah died. The cold certainty that the end was near. That all the training and sacrifice and determination in the world might not be enough to see them through the next 5 minutes. She looked at Amara. Her sister met her eyes, and in that moment, 1,000 words passed between them without a single sound. Everything they had shared, every fight and every victory, and every tear shed over a brother who died too young. All of it compressed into one silent exchange. Together, Amara said. Always, Naomi replied. The fighters reached the base of the compound. Naomi could hear them moving below, boots scraping on rubble, voices hissing commands in Pashto. They were preparing to breach. Hendricks, Naomi said. Cover the door. The lance corporal moved into position, his rifle aimed at the narrow entrance. His hands had stopped shaking. Whatever he had been before this day, whatever doubts and prejudices he had carried, they were gone now, burned away in the crucible of combat. The first fighter came through the door fast and low. Hendricks fired twice, and the man crumpled. The second was right behind him, rifle already up, and Naomi put 2 rounds from her pistol into his chest before he could pull the trigger. Then everything happened at once. Fighters poured through the entrance. Hendricks firing on full automatic. Amara's pistol barking beside Naomi's ear. Muzzle flashes in the darkness. Screams and shouts, and the copper smell of blood. A round caught Naomi in the shoulder. She felt the impact like a hammer blow, spinning her against the wall. Her pistol fell from nerveless fingers. Through the haze of pain, she saw a fighter raising his rifle toward her face. Amara moved faster than thought. She threw herself between Naomi and the gunman, her pistol coming up, and fired 3 times at point-blank range. The fighter collapsed at her feet. Then silence. Ringing silence broken only by the distant sounds of battle and the ragged breathing of 3 survivors standing among the dead. Naomi looked around. 5 enemy fighters on the ground. Hendricks slumped against the wall, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, but alive. Amara standing over her, pistol still raised, searching for more threats. How bad? Amara asked. Naomi looked at her shoulder. The round had passed through the muscle, missing bone and artery by centimeters. It hurt like nothing she had ever felt, but she would live. I will be fine, she said. Help me up. Amara pulled her to her feet. The world swam for a moment, then steadied. Naomi retrieved her pistol with her good hand and checked the magazine. 4 rounds left. We need to move, she said. More will come. Amara nodded. Then we make them regret it. She helped Naomi toward the door, stepping over the bodies of men who had come to kill them and found death instead. Behind them, Hendricks grabbed his rifle and followed. Outside, the sun was climbing higher and the helicopters were getting closer, and somewhere below, 240 Marines were winning a battle they should have lost. Because 2 sisters refused to let them die. They moved through the ruins like ghosts. Naomi leaned on Amara's shoulder, her wounded arm pressed tight against her body, blood seeping through the makeshift bandage Hendricks had tied around her shoulder. Every step sent fire through her nerves, but she kept moving. Stopping meant dying. The compound they had defended was no longer safe. More enemy fighters would come, drawn by the gunfire, and they had nothing left to hold them off. Their only chance was to link up with the Marines pushing through the valley below. Hendricks took point, his rifle sweeping the terrain ahead. He moved differently now. The nervous lance corporal who had climbed into their position an hour ago was gone, replaced by something harder, something forged in blood and fire and the desperate mathematics of survival. Contact left, he hissed. Naomi and Amara dropped into cover behind a crumbling wall. Through a gap in the stones, Naomi saw 2 fighters moving through an orchard 50 meters away. They had not spotted the Americans yet, but they were heading in their direction. Can you take them? Naomi whispered. Hendricks nodded. He settled his rifle against a broken beam and sighted down the barrel. 2 shots, 2 bodies falling among the poppy flowers. Amara squeezed his shoulder as they moved past. Good shooting. Hendricks said nothing, but Naomi saw his jaw tighten with something that might have been pride. They continued down the slope, picking their way through the debris of a battle that had torn the valley apart. Burned compounds, scattered equipment, bodies in the dirt, some American, most not. The cost of the day was written in blood across the Afghan soil. Naomi stumbled. Her vision blurred, and she felt Amara's grip tighten around her waist. Stay with me, her sister said. I am trying. Try harder. I did not drag you through Scout Sniper School just to lose you in some valley nobody can pronounce. Despite everything, Naomi almost smiled. That was Amara, making jokes when the world was falling apart, finding lightness in the darkness. It was how she coped, and Naomi loved her for it. They reached a drainage ditch that ran along the edge of the orchard. The water was brown and shallow, barely deep enough to provide cover, but it offered a concealed route toward the Marine positions. Amara helped Naomi down into the mud, and they began crawling. The sound of helicopters was louder now. Close air support had finally arrived, and Naomi could hear the heavy thump of weapons fire as gunships engaged enemy positions across the valley. The tide had turned completely. What had started as a devastating ambush had become a rout. But for the 3 Americans crawling through the mud, the battle was not over yet. Naomi heard voices ahead. Pashto! She held up her fist, and the group froze. Through the reeds at the edge of the ditch, she could see a group of fighters. 6 of them. They were clustered around a wounded man, arguing in urgent whispers. One of them kept pointing toward the hills, clearly wanting to retreat. Another was gesturing toward the American positions, still hoping to rejoin the fight. 6 men. Hendricks had maybe 20 rounds left. They had 8 between their pistols. Amara caught her eye and shook her head slightly. The message was clear. Too many. They needed to find another way. But there was no other way. The ditch curved directly toward the fighters, and the open ground on either side offered no cover. They could try to backtrack, but Naomi was losing blood with every passing minute. She did not have time for detours. Hendricks leaned close. I can take 3 before they react. Maybe 4. That still leaves 2 or 3, Naomi said. Amara checked her pistol. Then we take them together. Naomi looked at her sister. The same dark eyes that had watched over her since childhood. The same fierce determination that had carried them both through every obstacle the world had thrown in their path. If this was where it ended, at least they would face it side by side. She nodded. On your signal. Amara raised 3 fingers. 2. 1. Hendricks opened fire. The first 3 fighters went down before the others even understood what was happening. Amara surged up from the ditch, pistol blazing, and caught the 4th as he reached for his weapon. Naomi fired with her good hand, her shot going wide but forcing the 5th man to duck. The 6th fighter ran. He sprinted toward the orchard, abandoning his wounded comrade and his dead friends in his desperation to escape. Hendricks tracked him with his rifle, but did not fire. "Let him go," Naomi said. "We need every round." They pulled themselves out of the ditch and moved through the carnage. Naomi tried not to look at the faces of the men they had killed. They were the enemy. They had come to murder Americans. But they were still men, still someone's sons and brothers and fathers. The wounded fighter on the ground was staring up at them. His leg was shattered, blood pooling beneath him, and his eyes held the glassy look of a man who knew he was dying. He said something in Pashto that Naomi did not understand. Amara knelt beside him. She took his hand and held it for a moment. Then she stood and walked away. Naomi watched her sister's back. Even now, even after everything, Amara could not let a man die alone. It was the same compassion that had driven her to share water with young Aguayo that morning. The same humanity that made her something more than just a killer with a rifle. "Shade team," the radio crackled. Breslin's voice. "Give me your position." Naomi keyed the transmission. 200 meters north of the main compound. 3 personnel. 1 wounded. "We are coming to you." "Negative, Shade. Stay where you are. We're coming to you." Naomi wanted to argue, but she did not have the strength. She slumped against a wall and let her eyes close for just a moment. When she opened them, Amara was kneeling in front of her. "Marines are 2 minutes out," she said. "Just hold on." Naomi reached up and touched her sister's face. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." Amara smiled. Was there ever any doubt? Naomi laughed. It hurt, but she laughed anyway. Every single day. Amara took her hand. "Me too. But I never let it stop me." "No, you never did." They sat together in the ruins of the valley, 2 sisters who had walked through fire and come out the other side. Behind them, Hendricks stood guard with his rifle raised, watching for threats that no longer came. And in the distance, the sound of American voices calling their names. The Marines found them 2 minutes later. A squad of riflemen came around the corner of a bombed-out compound with weapons raised, their faces tense and dirty and beautiful in a way that only friendly forces could be in the middle of a war zone. "Friendlies," Hendricks called out. 3 friendlies. 1 wounded. The squad leader was a staff sergeant named Dominguez. He took one look at Naomi's bloody shoulder and started barking orders. "Corpsman up. Give me a stretcher. Someone get on the radio and tell Breslin we found Shade Team." Naomi tried to stand. "I can walk." Dominguez pushed her back down. "With respect, Sergeant, you look like death. Let us do our job." Corporal Yuki Tanaka appeared beside them, her medical bag already open. She was the same medic who had been working on wounded Marines in the kill zone when the ambush started. Now she was here, cutting away Naomi's sleeve, examining the wound with quick professional hands. "Through and through," Tanaka said. "Missed the artery. You're lucky." Naomi did not feel lucky. She felt exhausted and broken and hollowed out by a mourning that had lasted a lifetime. But she was alive. Her sister was alive. And the Marines they had sworn to protect were winning. Amara refused to leave her side. She crouched next to Naomi while Tanaka worked, her pistol still in her hand, her eyes scanning the ruins around them. The battle was winding down, but she would not relax until they were back at the firebase with walls around them and a roof overhead. Hendricks stood nearby, talking to Dominguez in a low voice. Naomi caught fragments of the conversation. "Sniper, 1,100 meters. Saved our lives." The staff sergeant kept glancing at the sisters with an expression that mixed disbelief with something that looked like respect. The radio crackled. Breslin's voice, clearer now. "All units, enemy forces are in full retreat. Secure your positions and prepare for extraction. Outstanding work today, Marines." Tanaka finished bandaging Naomi's shoulder and sat back on her heels. "You need surgery," she said. "But this will hold until we get you to the bird." Naomi nodded. "Thank you." Tanaka studied her for a moment. "I watched you," she said, "through my scope while I was working on the wounded. I saw what you did up there." Naomi did not know what to say. She had not been thinking about witnesses. She had not been thinking about anything except keeping Marines alive. Tanaka continued, "I have been in this corps for 6 years. I have seen a lot of shooters. I have never seen anything like what you two did today." Amara spoke without looking away from her watch. "We did what we had to do." "No." Tanaka shook her head. "You did what nobody else could do. There's a difference." She stood and moved away, leaving the sisters alone in their small circle of quiet amid the chaos of the aftermath. Naomi leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes. Amara's hand found hers. "You scare me today." Naomi opened her eyes. When you drew fire to give me the shot. When you got hit. When you kept fighting even though you were bleeding out. Take your pick." Naomi squeezed her sister's hand. "You would have done the same." "That is not the point." "Then what is the point?" Amara was quiet for a long moment. The sounds of the battlefield filled the silence. Helicopters, distant gunfire, Marines calling to each other as they secured the valley. "The point," Amara said finally, "is that I cannot lose you too." Naomi understood. Elijah's death had broken something in both of them. It had driven them to enlist, to push through training that was designed to break them, to prove themselves in a world that did not want to acknowledge what they could do. But beneath all that determination was a wound that had never healed. "You're not going to lose me," Naomi said. "Promise." "I promise." Amara nodded slowly. Then she did something she had not done since they were children. She leaned her head against Naomi's good shoulder and closed her eyes. They stayed like that for a long moment, two sisters resting against each other in the rubble of a battle they had turned through sheer force of will. Around them, Marines moved and worked and prepared for extraction. But in their small space, there was only silence and exhaustion and the bone-deep relief of survival. Dominguez approached. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but we are moving out. Can she walk?" Amara stood. "She can walk, but I am staying with her." "Nobody said otherwise," Dominguez replied. "After today, I do not think anybody is going to tell you two what to do ever again." He helped Naomi to her feet. The world tilted for a moment, then steadied. Amara moved to her side, supporting her weight, and together they began the long walk back to the extraction point. The valley stretched out before them, scarred and smoking from the battle that had raged across it. Bodies lay in the fields and compounds. Burned vehicles marked the sites of the fiercest fighting. It looked like hell. It smelled like death. But the Marines were walking out of it. 240 men and women who had walked into an ambush that should have killed half of them were walking out with their heads high and their weapons ready. Because two sisters had refused to accept the fate that had been written for them. Hendricks fell in a step beside them. He did not say anything. He did not need to. His presence was enough. They walked together toward the waiting helicopters, toward safety, toward whatever came next. And behind them, the Sanjin Valley fell silent at last. The helicopter lifted off from the valley floor in a storm of dust and noise. Naomi sat with her back against the bulkhead, her wounded arm strapped to her chest, watching through the open door as the Sanjin Valley fell away beneath them. From up here, the battlefield looked almost peaceful, just brown earth and green fields and the scattered remains of compounds that had seen too much violence. Amara sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Neither of them spoke. There were no words left. Everything they needed to say had been said in the moments between gunfire and the silence afterward. Hendricks was across from them, his rifle between his knees, staring at the floor. He had not said much since they left the valley. Naomi wondered what was going through his mind. How do you process a day like this? How do you go back to being the person you were before you watched two women do the impossible? The crew chief leaned toward them, shouting over the roar of the rotors. "Word is spreading. The whole battalion is talking about what you did." Naomi did not respond. She did not want to talk about it. She wanted to sleep for 100 years and wake up in a world where her shoulder did not feel like it was filled with broken glass. Amara answered for her. "We just did our job." The crew chief shook his head. "I have been flying Marines for 8 years. What you did was not just a job. That was something else entirely." He turned away and Amara leaned closer to Naomi. "You hear that? We are famous. Naomi closed her eyes. I would rather be anonymous and unshot. Where's the fun in that? The helicopter banked toward Firebase Phoenix, the forward operating base that had been their home for the past 3 weeks. From the air, Naomi could see Marines gathering near the landing zone. Word had traveled faster than they had. She felt a knot form in her stomach. She had never wanted attention. Neither had Amara. They had joined the Corps to serve, to honor their brother, to prove that women could do everything men could do. They had not done it for recognition or glory, but recognition was coming whether they wanted it or not. The helicopter touched down, and the crew chief slid the door open. A wall of heat and dust hit them, along with something else. Applause, scattered at first, then building as more Marines joined in. Naomi stared. Dozens of people had gathered around the landing zone. Marines from their battalion, support personnel, officers, and enlisted alike. They were clapping and cheering as the sisters climbed out of the helicopter. Amara helped Naomi down, supporting her weight as they stepped onto solid ground. The noise washed over them like a wave. Lieutenant Breslin pushed through the crowd. His arm was in a sling from the wound he had taken in the ambush, but his eyes were bright and his face was split by a grin. "Shade Team," he said. "Welcome home." Naomi tried to salute, but her wounded arm would not cooperate. "Sir," Breslin waved off the formality. "Save it. You two have earned the right to skip the ceremony." He turned to address the gathered Marines. "Listen up. What happened today in that valley is going to be studied at Quantico for years. 240 Marines walked into a kill zone that should have cut us in half. We walked out with every swinging soul accounted for. And the reason we walked out is standing right here." He gestured toward the sisters. Sergeant First Class Naomi O'Yellerin and Sergeant Amara O'Yellerin. 23 confirmed kills between them. Enemy sniper eliminated. Enemy commander eliminated. Counterattack broken. All from a position they were ordered to stay out of. A murmur ran through the crowd. 23. The number hung in the air like something sacred. Breslin continued. These 2 Marines disobeyed a direct order today. And because they did, every single one of you is going home to your families instead of going home in a box. Sometimes the right thing and the ordered thing are not the same. Today, Shade Team knew the difference. More applause. Louder now. Marines pressing forward to shake their hands, to clap them on the back, to offer words of thanks and admiration. Naomi felt overwhelmed. The faces blurred together. The voices merged into a single roar. Then a gap opened in the crowd, and everything went quiet. Gunnery Sergeant Victor Harlan walked toward them. The Marines parted before him like water. Nobody spoke. Everyone knew the history. Everyone had heard the mockery, the dismissals, the orders to stay in the rear where the ink models could not get hurt. Harlan stopped in front of the sisters. His face was unreadable. Dust and sweat, and what might have been dried blood, covered his uniform. He looked like a man who had been through hell and come out the other side. Naomi straightened despite the pain. She met his eyes without flinching. Whatever he had to say, she would take it standing. Harlan looked at her, then at Amara, then back at Naomi. The silence stretched until it seemed like it would snap. Then Gunnery Sergeant Harlan did something nobody expected. He saluted. It was crisp and sharp and perfect. The salute of a Marine with 20 years of service. The salute of a man who had earned every ribbon on his chest through blood and sacrifice. And he was giving it to them. "Sergeant O'Yellerin," he said. His voice was rough. "Sergeant O'Yellerin, I was wrong about you. Both of you. What you did today saved lives. Marines are going home because of you." He paused. "I am sorry." Naomi stared at him. Of all the things she had expected, an apology was not among them. Amara spoke first. "Apology accepted, Gunny." Harlan lowered his salute. He looked older somehow, tired in a way that went beyond the physical. "I've been doing this a long time," he said. "Sometimes you get set in your ways. Sometimes you stop seeing what is right in front of you." He shook his head. "I will not make that mistake again." He turned and walked away, the crowd parting once more to let him pass. Naomi watched him go. She did not know what to feel. Vindication, relief, exhaustion, all of them at once. Amara squeezed her hand. "Come on," she said. "Let us get you to medical. We can figure out the rest later." They walked through the crowd together, Marines stepping aside with nods of respect, and Naomi realized something had changed. Not just Harlan, not just Hendricks, everything. They had walked into the Sanjin Valley as outcasts. They were walking out as legends. The medical tent smelled like antiseptic and sweat. Naomi lay on a cot while a Navy corpsman cleaned her wound and prepared her for the surgery that would come later at the Forward Surgical Team facility. The bullet had done more damage than Tanaka's field assessment had suggested. Muscle torn, minor nerve damage, 6 to 8 weeks of recovery before she would hold a rifle again. Amara sat on a folding chair beside the cot, refusing to leave despite the corpsman's repeated suggestions that she get some rest. Her rifle was finally out of her hands, locked in the armory with Naomi's, but her vigilance remained. She watched the entrance to the tent like she expected enemy fighters to come pouring through at any moment. "You can relax," Naomi said. "The battle is over. I will relax when we are back in the States. That could be months. Then I will be tense for months." The corpsman finished his work and stepped back. "That is the best I can do here," he said. "The surgeons will take care of the rest." "You're going to be fine, Sergeant." Naomi nodded her thanks. The pain medication was starting to work, softening the sharp edges of the world into something almost bearable. She let her head fall back against the thin pillow and stared at the canvas ceiling. Visitors started arriving within the hour. Hendricks came first. He stood awkwardly at the entrance to the tent, his cover in his hands, looking like a boy called to the principal's office. "Come in," Amara said. "She's not going to bite." He approached slowly and stopped at the foot of Naomi's cot. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "both of you, for letting me fight beside you today." Naomi studied him. The arrogant lance corporal who had laughed at Harlan's jokes was gone. In his place stood someone different, someone who had seen what courage looked like and been changed by it. "You did get out there," she said. "When it mattered, you stepped up." Hendricks shook his head. "I just pulled a trigger. You two did something else. Something I did not think was possible." Amara leaned forward. "Let me tell you something, Hendricks. Before today, you looked at us and saw tattoos and gender and everything your assumptions told you to see. Today you looked at us and saw Marines. That is the only difference that matters." He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I understand. Good. Now go get some rest. You earned it." Hendricks left, and others took his place. Marines from the battalion. Men and women who had fought in the valley. Some she recognized. Some she did not. They came in ones and twos, offering thanks, sharing stories from the battle, telling her about moments she had not seen from her elevated position. Private First Class Aguayo came in a wheelchair, his leg wrapped in bandages. He was pale and drawn, but his eyes were bright. "They told me what you did," he said. "That shot you made when I went down. The machine gunner who was about to finish me." Naomi remembered. 900 meters. Wind shifting. The desperate calculation of a woman running out of time and ammunition. "I remember," she said. Aguayo's voice cracked. "I am 19 years old. I have a mom and a little sister back in El Paso. They are going to see me again because of you." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I do not know how to thank you for that." Naomi reached out with her good hand and squeezed his arm. "You do not have to thank me. Just go home and live a good life. That is enough." He nodded, unable to speak, and his escort wheeled him away. Amara watched him go. "That is what we did it for," she said quietly. "Not the medals. Not the recognition. That kid going home to his family." Naomi closed her eyes. "I know." The stream of visitors continued until evening. Tanaka stopped by to check on her wound. Dominguez brought food from the chow hall. Even Breslin made an appearance, his arm still in its sling, to tell her that the battalion commander was recommending both sisters for Bronze Stars. Through it all, Amara stayed at her side. She ate when Naomi ate. She dozed when Naomi dozed. She was there every time Naomi opened her eyes, a constant presence that needed no explanation. As the sun began to set, painting the canvas walls of the tent in shades of orange and gold, one final visitor arrived. Gunnery Sergeant Harlan stepped through the entrance. He had cleaned up since the landing zone. Fresh uniform, face washed, but his eyes still carried the weight of the day. Amara tensed but did not speak. Harlan approached the cot and stood at attention. Permission to speak freely, Sergeant. Naomi nodded. Granted. He relaxed slightly, but his posture remained rigid. I have been in the Corps for 20 years, he said. I have served with some of the finest warriors this country has ever produced. And I have never seen anything like what you two did today. Naomi waited. There was more coming. She could see it in the way he held himself, the way his jaw worked like he was chewing on words he did not want to say. My wife was a Marine, Harlan continued. Did you know that? No, Ghani. I did not. She died while I was deployed. Cancer. He paused. I was not there. I was on the other side of the world doing my duty, and she died alone in a hospital bed. After that, I started thinking that maybe women did not belong in this life. That maybe if she had never joined, she would have caught earlier, would have had time to fight it. He shook his head. That was not fair. Not to her memory. Not to you. Not to any woman who puts on this uniform. Amara spoke softly. We are sorry for your loss, Ghani. Harlan looked at her. Thank you. He turned back to Naomi. I am not asking for forgiveness. What I did was wrong, and I have to live with that. But I want you to know that I see you now. Both of you. And I will never make that mistake again. He saluted once more. Then he turned and walked out of the tent without another word. Naomi stared at the empty entrance for a long time. Amara broke the silence. I did not expect that. Neither did I. Do you believe him? Naomi considered the question. She thought about the mockery and the dismissals and the orders that had almost cost them everything. She thought about the salute on the landing zone and the confession in the medical tent. Yes, she said finally. I believe him. Amara nodded. Good. Because we have to work with him tomorrow. Naomi almost laughed. That was Amara. Always practical. Always looking ahead. I guess we better get some sleep, Naomi said. Amara smiled and settled back in her chair. I will be right here. I know. Outside, the sun finished its descent, and the firebase settled into the quiet rhythms of night. Somewhere in the darkness, 240 Marines were sleeping safely because two sisters had refused to accept the limits others had placed on them. And in the medical tent, those sisters finally allowed themselves to rest. 3 days passed before Naomi was cleared to leave the medical facility. The surgery had gone well. The nerve damage was less severe than feared. The doctor said she would make a full recovery, though the scar would be with her forever. She did not mind the scar. Scars were just stories written on skin. Amara was waiting outside when she emerged, standing in the morning sun with 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She offered one to Naomi without a word. They walked together through the firebase, moving slowly to accommodate Naomi's healing shoulder. The base looked different somehow. The same tents and barriers and vehicles, but the way people looked at them had changed. Marines nodded as they passed. Some saluted even though regulations did not require it. Others simply stepped aside with expressions of quiet respect. This is strange, Naomi said. What is? Being seen. Amara sipped her coffee. We were always seen. They just did not like what they were looking at. And now they have to admit they were wrong. They found a quiet spot near the perimeter, a small bench overlooking the mountains that surrounded the firebase. The peaks were still touched with snow despite the heat of the valley below. Beautiful in a way that seemed impossible for a place that had seen so much death. Naomi sat down carefully, favoring her wounded side. Amara settled beside her. I have been thinking about Elijah, Amara said. Naomi nodded. She had been thinking about him too. It was impossible not to. Everything they had done, everything they had become, traced back to a folded flag and a brother who never came home. What about him? Amara was quiet for a moment. When he died, I thought I would never stop being angry. Angry at the war. Angry at the people who sent him there. Angry at God for taking him. She paused. I joined the Corps because I wanted to turn that anger into something. Prove that his death meant something. That we could do what he did and more. Naomi understood. She had felt the same rage, the same desperate need to make meaning from meaningless loss. And now Amara continued. After what happened in that valley, I think maybe I finally understand. Understand what? That it was never about proving anything. She turned to look at Naomi. Elijah did not die, so we could be angry. He died doing what he believed in. Protecting people. Serving something bigger than himself. We honor him by doing the same, not by carrying rage, but by carrying his purpose. Naomi felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back, but one escaped anyway, tracing a warm line down her cheek. When did you get so wise? Amara smiled. I have always been wise. You were just too busy being the older sister to notice. Naomi laughed. It hurt her shoulder, but she did not care. Some pain was worth feeling. They sat in silence for a while, watching the mountains and drinking their coffee and letting the morning sun warm their faces. For the first time since Elijah's funeral, Naomi felt something close to peace. A voice interrupted the moment. Mind if I join you? Hendricks stood a few feet away, looking uncertain. He had a folder tucked under his arm and an expression that suggested he had something important to say. Amara gestured to the empty space beside them. Pull up some dirt. He sat down and opened the folder. I have been asking around, he said, talking to people who were in the valley, putting together a picture of what happened. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Why? Because someone should. He pulled out a sheet of paper covered in handwritten notes. 23 confirmed kills. That is the official number, but it does not tell the whole story. What does it leave out? Hendricks consulted his notes. The machine gun Nesu took out in the first 5 minutes. That position had a clear line of fire on 30 Marines in the poppy field. If you had not eliminated it, conservative estimates say at least 10 of them would have died. He flipped to another page. The enemy sniper. He had already killed 2 of ours and wounded 3 more. Based on his position and sight lines, he could have kept killing until we were combat ineffective. You ended that threat with 1 shot from 1,100 meters. More pages. More numbers. The RPG teams that would have devastated the advance. The commander whose death broke the counterattack. The fighters in the compound who would have overrun the wounded if the sisters had not stopped them. Hendricks looked up from his notes. By my count, you 2 directly saved between 40 and 60 lives yesterday. Probably more. He shook his head. I wanted you to know. I wanted someone to have it written down. Naomi did not know what to say. The numbers were abstract. Statistics on a page. But behind each one was a face, a family, a future that would have been erased without their intervention. Amara took the folder from Hendricks and flipped through it. This is thorough work. I learned from the best. He paused. I learned by watching you. How you calculated every shot. How you never wasted a round. How you stayed calm when everything was falling apart. He looked at both of them. I want to be that kind of Marine. I want to be worthy of what you showed me. Naomi studied him. The transformation was complete. The arrogant boy who had mocked them was gone, replaced by a man who understood what service really meant. You're already worthy, she said. You proved that when you climbed into our position with bullets flying. Everything else is just practice. Hendricks nodded slowly. Thank you, Sergeant. He stood and walked away, leaving the folder with him. Amara watched him go. We did that, she said. We changed him. Naomi shook her head. No, the valley changed him. We just gave him something to believe in. Same thing. Maybe. The sun climbed higher. The coffee grew cold. And somewhere in the distance, a helicopter lifted off in the landing zone, carrying wounded Marines toward better care and eventual homecoming. Naomi touched the bandage on her shoulder. She would heal. They all would. The scars would fade, and the memories would soften, and life would continue its relentless forward march. But some things would never change. The bond between sisters who had walked through fire together. The debt owed to a brother who had shown them the way. And the knowledge that when it mattered most, they had been exactly who they needed to be. The ceremony took place 1 week after the battle. They held it on the parade ground at Firebase Phoenix. 200 Marines standing in formation under a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. The battalion commander had flown in from Kandahar. A 2-star general had made the trip from Kabul. Word of what happened in the Sanjin Valley had spread far beyond the walls of their small outpost. Naomi stood at attention beside her sister, her wounded arm still in a sling, but her uniform pressed and perfect. Amara was beside her, straight-backed and calm, her face betraying nothing of the emotions churning beneath the surface. The general spoke first. He talked about valor and sacrifice and the highest traditions of the Marine Corps. He talked about impossible odds and impossible shots and the impossible courage of two women who refused to accept defeat. Then Lieutenant Breslin stepped forward with two small boxes. "Sergeant First Class Naomi O'Yelleran," he said, "for extraordinary heroism in combat operations against an armed enemy, for actions that directly resulted in the survival of your fellow Marines. The United States Marine Corps awards you the Bronze Star with Combat Distinguishing Device." He pinned the medal to her chest. The medal was cold against her uniform, heavier than she expected for something so small. "Sergeant Amara O'Yelleran, for extraordinary heroism in combat operations against an armed enemy, for marksmanship and tactical excellence that eliminated critical enemy threats and enabled the successful completion of the mission. The United States Marine Corps awards you the Bronze Star with Combat Distinguishing Device." Amara received her medal with the same quiet dignity she brought to everything. "No es mal, no tears," just a simple nod of acknowledgement. The general shook their hands. The battalion commander offered his congratulations. Marines applauded in the crisp, controlled way that military formations always applaud, respectful but restrained. Then it was over. The formation dissolved. People drifted away to their duties and their racks and their lives. And the O'Yelleran sisters stood alone on the parade ground, bronze stars gleaming on their chests. Amara spoke first. "Elijah would have made fun of us." Naomi smiled, relentlessly. He would have said we were showing off. We were showing off. A little. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the empty ground. It felt good to laugh. It felt human in a way that nothing had felt since the valley. A figure approached from across the parade ground. Gunnery Sergeant Harlan walked toward them with purpose in his stride. He stopped a few feet away and regarded them with an expression Naomi had never seen on his face before. Something like warmth. "Got a minute?" he asked. The sisters exchanged a glance. "Always, Gunny." Harlan reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. He held out to them. A challenge coin. The kind Marines traded to mark shared experiences and mutual respect. This one was old and worn, the edges smoothed by years of handling. "This belonged to my wife," he said. "She carried it through 2 deployments. Said it brought her luck." He paused. "I want you to have it." Naomi stared at the coin. "Gunny, we cannot accept that." "Yes, you can." He pressed it into her hand. "She would have wanted you to have it. She would have seen in you what I was too blind to see." He stepped back. "You two are the finest Marines I have ever served with. I am proud to call you my sisters in arms." He saluted one final time. Then he turned and walked away, leaving them with a dead woman's luck and a living man's respect. Amara looked at the coin in Naomi's palm. "That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever given us." "It might be." They stood in silence for a moment, feeling the weight of the gift and everything it represented. Forgiveness, redemption, the possibility of change even in the most stubborn hearts. Hendricks appeared at the edge of the parade ground. He waved and jogged over to join them. "Hey," he said, "some of us are getting together tonight. Food, drinks, war stories. You two should come." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Are we invited or commanded?" "Invited. Definitely invited." He grinned. "But if you do not show up, I'm telling everyone you are scared of a little social interaction." Amara snorted. "We'll be there." Hendricks nodded and jogged away, already calling out to someone else across the compound. The sisters watched him go. "He has changed," Amara said. "Everyone has changed, including us." Naomi thought about that. She thought about the women they had been before the valley. Skilled but untested, confident but unproven, carrying a brother's legacy like a weight around their necks. They were different now. The weight was still there, but it had transformed into something else. Not a burden, but a foundation. Not grief, but purpose. If this story moved you, share your thoughts about what moment hit hardest, or tell us about a time you witnessed someone silence their doubters. That night, they gathered in a tent with 50 other Marines. There was food and laughter and stories that grew taller with each telling. Hendricks described the sisters as 8 feet tall and bulletproof. Tanaka claimed she saw Amara shoot a fly off a wall at 1,000 meters. Even Harlan contributed, telling a story about his wife that had everyone laughing and wiping their eyes. Naomi sat in the middle of it all, her sister beside her, surrounded by people who had once doubted them and now called them heroes. It was not perfect. The scars were still fresh and the memories still raw. But it was good. It was earned. Amara leaned close. You know this is just the beginning, right? Naomi nodded. I know. More battles. More doubters. More chances to prove what we are capable of. Naomi looked around the tent at the faces of Marines who would follow them anywhere now. At Hendricks raising a toast in their honor. At Harlan nodding with quiet pride. Then we better be ready, she said. Amara smiled. We were born ready. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, and the mountains stood silent watch, and somewhere in the darkness the Sanjin Valley held the memory of a battle that changed everything. 240 Marines had been pinned down that day. 2 tattooed sniper sisters had been mocked. And then they turned the tide. Not because they wanted glory, not because they needed to prove themselves, but because when the moment came, they knew exactly who they were. O'Yelleran's sisters, Shade Team, Marines, and nobody would ever forget it.